Incompetent DM railroads and screws over party. Note: this is not my story. My friend didn't want to make a Reddit account, so I'm posting it in their stead, with their permission, of course. This story happened about a year ago before its surreptitious whatever ended due to everyone just getting fed up. It may end up being a longer story than intended, but I'll try to focus on only the necessary points. This story has unfortunate encounters with the DMPC, favoritism, railroading, and overall a game that left me with a distaste for TTRPGs. The cast: Raven, myself, playing a warlock. Crow, a player who joined in a bit later, playing a bard. Eagle, one of the OG players, playing a rogue and later a druid. Falcon, another OG player, as a fighter. Robin, playing a wizard. He was the lucky one. Hawk, the problem DM and the source of many, many issues. So, let's start this story off fairly early into the campaign. I believe only Session 8 was when the first issue arose. The group at the time was Falcon, Eagle, myself, and Robin, all starting our first big adventure. When we came across 3 trees and some shrubs blocking our cart from traversing the path, the rogue took the initiative to investigate the odd encounter as the rest of us stayed behind. He rolled to investigate, getting a 21, and Hawk told him that there wasn't anything suspicious. But when he turned away to walk back, one of the trees attacked him, starting combat which wasn't going well. The tree mimics critted the rogue twice, bringing him down instantly. He failed his last death save, which unfortunately killed his character. Now, at first, that may not seem odd, just bad luck. But Hawk had told me in private how he hated Eagle's character build, as his character was a swashbuckler strength rogue, and wanted to kill him so he didn't have to deal with his swashbuckler abilities. And when I tell you the glee I heard in his voice when he got the second crit wasn't exactly comforting. Now comes my direct encounter with Hawk, and his less than desirable behavior. The warlock was functionally Hawk's character, as he practically made her, from the stats to her backstory. I really didn't get a lot of input. He had this odd favoritism for me, as there were times when I was given inspiration for out-of-character jokes I made. One very prime example was I made a Critical Role reference, not even in character, and he rewarded me with inspiration. He gave me a lot of knowledge about the game out of character, such as secrets about the party members, major plot points, and even told me about certain encounters that were going to happen. He spoiled the ending of his own game for me, and because of his feelings, I actually left for a while. Because of the favoritism, I started hating my warlock. I even told him how much I hated the character. But when I foolishly returned, he made an even worse decision, by essentially introducing a self-insert DM NPC named Roran. He was the leader of a cult that worshipped my character's patron, and when he realized my warlock was the wielder of said entity, he tried allying himself to her. Roran was directly involved in a little too much of the game, becoming a direct ally to the warlock. He even introduced a romance plot between them that I quickly turned down, which seemed to offend him directly, as even out of the game, he started being more passive-aggressive about my actions. Now, Falcon had by far the worst of it. He's a kind person, and more or less kept the peace in the group. He was playing a homebrew subclass called a Scale Bearer that Haka made, that made him functionally an integral part of the game. However, he was plagued with Hawk's incompetence with the overarching plot of the game. Falcon wasn't ever given the backstory spotlight he deserved, such as one time we went into a draconic fort where his subclass really came in handy, but only in combat, as it had no real role-playing potential. Whenever we were in a draconic puzzle or something of that nature, he was pretty much shit out of luck. Another instance was when we went into a scale-bearer fort to try and gain allies, and they called him a traitor and demanded a trial by combat no matter what we tried to do, as there was really no evidence against him to be executed immediately. But alas, what can one do? He thankfully survived, and then uncovered a suspicious figure within the scale-bearers who was trying to gain power. But nothing came of that plot point soon after, and it was quickly forgotten. There were also several attempts to make Aaron's uncle somewhat of a threatening figure, as Hawk tried a ham-fisted attempt to redirect us onto a storyline. And the last one I remember is one of the worst things Hawk did before the game ended. As we were on an airship going to this floating sky island, it was somehow attacked by mercenaries that had no flying equipment or anything, and they managed to successfully kidnap a player character without any of us noticing, or without a role to even try and stop them. This caused a major uproar, as Falcon was absent for that session, and we all thought it unfair. Hawk did the first sensible thing in a long time, and retconned the encounter completely. Crow got the short end of the stick a lot of the time, due to him being a pure bard, which in this setting was apparently unwise, as all the creatures either did no common, had high wisdom or charisma, and were immune to enchantment spells. So the bard, against at least my personal view of his character, turned to religion. He became a paladin, and started putting a lot of his spells to focus on damage, rather than buffing, as the bard was pretty much dead weight in a lot of combat scenarios that we unfortunately encountered more than once. Now, we get to one of the worst moments in the campaign, the Fey Forest, and consequently a raid on a draconic ship within the Feywild. It started off seemingly alright, with the group adventuring initially to go get a piece of the Warlock's pact weapon. But I left at the time, and therefore the main group diverted off. So it was Crow, Falcon, Eagle, and Robin, all adventuring through the forest. Eagle was at this point playing as forest druid, who had a very good survival and was pretty much built to perfectly navigate a Fey forest. But Hawk at the time hated how easily the group was navigating through the forest, because he wanted it to be difficult. But the druid's ability allowed him to bypass pretty much all the encounters and difficulties. So Hawk, against everyone's will, did not allow Eagle to use his character to his fullest capabilities. Next major mistake Hawk made was railroading the gang into meeting an Archfey, by giving the group a very deadly encounter that made the Archfey act as Deus Ex Machina in order to prevent a TPK. If said Archfey hadn't intervened, only the bard would have survived, which, after they had dealt with, the Archfey apparently dropped them off in the middle of the sky for whatever reason, so they had to quickly use up valuable resources to not fall to their deaths. The last thing within the Fey Forest was somewhat stupid, was Hawk had this Fey Wild effects list, where once everyone left the forest, they had to make a save. Falcon was the only one who failed the save, and he forgot everything about the encounters within the forest. Literally everything he completely forgot with one semi-low roll. Now we get to the really bad shit. The beginning of the end. When I rejoined with a new character, a monk, who joined the main group to help them infiltrate this major draconic ship stuck in the Feywilds. We had no information on the interior, nor the number of dragons inside, or anything at all. We went there blinder than bats, just to rescue some fuck-ass NPC prince. Nothing happened on our way inside of the ship, but primarily everything went bad inside. Crow had his bard turn into a green dragonborn, while Eagle had his druid turn into a lizard that perched on the dragonborn's neck, while the rest of us hid in the back and allowed Crow to take charge and infiltrate. Primarily everything was going well. We had managed to go through without a lot of combat, much to the dismay of Hawk. After one pretty easy combat encounter, we were approaching the jail cells through blind luck. We found our way into this seemingly empty hallway that had totally nothing wrong with it. Crow activated his sense invisibility, thankfully, and saw a laser grid that was moving constantly. We tried twice to deactivate it using Draconic, but every failed attempt made the grid move faster and potentially set off an alarm alerting everyone. After a while, everyone just decided to make a break for it. Thankfully, my monk could evade most of the damage, but everyone else got shafted by the damage. By the way, there were 2 whole hallways of this, so we had to deal with it twice. When we finally got to the jail cells, it was pretty much us running in and trying to help only the prince because the alarms had gone off. When we went into the jail cells, it was a massive cell with the prince, suspended in an anti-magic sphere. We had to make a successful arcana check, or else the prince got injured. Thankfully, Robin was a divination wizard, and we got through that without the prince taking too much damage. But the bullshittery that happened next is what really pissed everyone off, where we had a combat with an enemy that we thought had died, a green half-dragon, who had 2 fairy dragon sidekicks. The same green dragon stole a dagger of venom off of the hip of Crow without a roll. Combat started, and the half-dragon told the bard that he was going to kill him, but since the bard was too far away, he targeted my monk, which instantly killed him due to assassinate, plus the dagger of venom, plus some other bullshit that dealt 124 points of damage. He targeted my monk for no reason instead of waiting for the one he wanted to kill, which consequently forced me to play my warlock again, even though I had a cleric backup character in case my monk died from something this DM pulled. So that's pretty much everything from what I can remember. I still interact with Hawk, but only in one game. This whole situation also just made me start disliking him as a person. Thanks for reading this long-ass rant. TLDR, players get shafted by an incompetent DM who can't manage the story well. DM plays favorites and prevents certain playstyles in his game by making stupid encounters. I'm sorry, but this whole post is confusing me left and right. There's a lot of it that seems to be normal or interesting, stuff that would normally happen, and stuff that would be really cool, like the Feywild. I'm pretty sure it's normal to have something happen when you leave the Feywild, and even if it isn't, that's an interesting mechanic. There were a few instances where there should have been rolls, and no favoritism, and maybe more story, but there wasn't, and that may be that the DM is still learning, or they just struggle with that type of stuff. Who knows? However, if the DM was so incompetent, it doesn't make sense to leave and then keep coming back, especially if it was hated so much. There must have been something that made it fun enough to keep coming back. But that was all I had. Please leave your comments down in the comments below. That didn't even make sense. I meant to put, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And I'll see you next time at Lisa's Dungeon. Goodbye!